everybody, and sincere apologies, for the technical. So it's a little bit, it's actually never happened to us before, but anyway, as with any good thing, there will always be these type of challenges, and I do sincerely appreciate your patience. And, as people say, the devil is indeed a lie, but anyway, here we start. So first of all, Mr. Mohale, thank you so much for your patience, and I think my bad. Actually, I think we could have just organized a little bit, maybe just tested a bit. So I would like to really thank you again and welcome you to this platform. So just before we really start, I just want to give you guys a bit of background in terms of who Mr. Bonang Mohale is. And so his full name, and my understanding, is Bonang Francis Mohale. And so currently he's the independent non-executive chairman of the Bidvest Group Limited, South African born, and he's married to a lovely, woman named Susan, and they have 2 children. Even though they got married at a very young age, he's proud of his wife for being supportive and driving him to pursue his dreams. So Mr. Mohale's wealth of experience in the business sector is a factor of his educational background, which can be summed up as follows. He's got a certificate in marketing sales management diploma in marketing management, postgraduate advanced diploma in marketing management, and basics of pharmacology at the Wits Medical School. And there's probably more, attributes towards his education. His professional career began after he had completed his studies in basic pharmacology. He spent 10 years working in the pharmaceutical industry and served several positions, among them new business development management and product management. So in some other positions that he has served in is managing director of Otis and the lift company. And this is probably where I found, heard of him. And I think I should have pursued, my curiosity about the gentleman, and I regret not having done so much earlier. He's also the executive vice. He was also the executive vice president of the South African Airways, the chief executive of corporate marketing of Sanlam Limited, chief executive officer of Drake and Skull FM South Africa, chairman of Shell South Africa, and chief executive officer of Business Leadership of South Africa, professor of practice at Johannesburg Business School, College of Business and Economics. So he's also a member of many forums, among past and present. You've got the BMF, Institute of Marketing Management, Association of Marketers, the Institute of Directors, Young Presidents Organizations, YPO, South Africa, and South Africa-Israel Chamber of Commerce. On the 20th of November 2019, his skills and success in the world of business attracted a new position for Mr. Mohale. He was appointed to serve the role of the Bidvest chair officially. This appointment came after his dedicated service as the company's non-executive director since July 2019. And on the 30th March 2020, he was appointed as the Chancellor of the Free State University. Apart from a very successful career in business and opportunity to serve in some of the most coveted positions, Mr. Mohale boasts the following chain of achievements: the Institute of People Management Award, which was accorded to him in 2012, the Presidential Award for his servanthood in South African industry and the economic empowerment of previously disadvantaged individuals. The award was presented to him in 2012. First of all, I have to express my excitement, just to have this privilege and this opportunity, to be here with Mr. Mohale. And I think the last time I was probably this excited. If you may just quickly allow me. Evans, if you can allow me to share screen.
Yes, sure, I will do that.
Okay. I have a picture.
I await your request.
Yeah, if you can allow me now, I'd like to share screen.
No problem. I'll do that.
Okay.
It's moving faster than I can. So,
Looking for that picture, John Maxwell picture.
interesting.
But anyway, it is unfortunately just taking longer. But anyway, I'll just I'll put up the picture, I think, at a later stage. So just to continue, so this is essentially, I've just given, a very, very rough, background, maybe a little bit more detail on Mr. Mohale. So Mr. Mohale, I'm just going to just go right ahead and just kick off. On your preface on your book, and the reason why we are here, my fellow, book readers, and listen, I will be remiss if I do not acknowledge the presence of my esteemed colleagues from the Fat Cats Book Club, who have graced us with their presence just for the love of books. Thank you so much for your attendance. It's really, really much appreciated. I'm just going to move ahead and start with the preface. You wrote in the preface of the book, but until and unless you see it, that possibility, that option will never exist for you. We live in a society currently now in South Africa that is vastly, vastly marginalized. Under these environments, how do you encourage, a very disadvantaged, child, so marginalized, to dream and see hope?
So, Sis Mimi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
So I'm going to be naughty and really make it up to you guys for being late, even though I was sweating so much because I really wanted to do this. I will answer it in a slightly more philosophical manner because my understanding is that all of us on the line are Black people, right?
Yes.
And all of us are Africans, right?
Absolutely.
So let me make maybe 3 controversial statements as I start to answer your question. The first says, we must build our own businesses and hire our own children. It is absolute madness to continue to make babies and send them to a different neighborhood for them to be employed by somebody else or ask for employment from somebody else.
Yeah.
No people can be helped by or benefit from institutions that are not a direct result of their own character.
Absolutely.
So for me, there's an African adage that says, a child that does not feel embraced by the village will burn the village down in order to feel its warmth. So when you take all 3 of them together, it sends a message that says, especially for South Africans, 26 years into democracy, we should have used the institutions of political power to change the material conditions of the majority of our people. We must have, by now, have lifted the bottom half into the middle class. But because we're focusing on other things, that's why this pandemic found us at our weakest, and the timing was absolutely at its worst. One, we had just survived from 9 years of state capture.
Yes.
Number 2, we had just entered a technical recession. Now, yesterday we heard that this is our 3rd consecutive quarter of a contraction. Thirdly, we had just been downgraded by Moody's to be low investment grade. and the pandemic just finished us off as COVID-19. Very few countries in the world will survive the pandemic on its own. But even fewer will survive all four put together concurrently, simultaneously, and in parallel. Therefore, you can see that as Africans, as South Africans, our work is cut out for us. It has never been more difficult to try and change the material conditions of the majority of our people. Sis Mimi?
You know, sure. I'm telling you right now, I think the times are really, 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 really challenging. They're really challenging. And I think by God's grace, the very few of us are sitting here today and are able to have a roof over our heads, still have some form of employment when a lot of people, honestly, are not in that type of situation. But this conversation, Mr. Mohale, is really not going to be about me. A lot of my colleagues out there are very, very, very eager to ask you, a lot of questions. And then I really want to, in light of the time, and I'm very mindful and I'm very sensitive of the time, in light of the time, I would really like to just open up the floor. And I'm going to start with you, Lindiwe. Lindiwe, are you ready with your question? And I will not pose a question on your behalf if you don't mind just going ahead and speaking to Mr. Mohale directly.
Oh, okay. Good evening. Well, good evening, everyone, and good evening, Mr. Mohale. I initially submitted 5 questions, but I'll just pick one. And one would be like on page, I think page 200, you had spoken about the challenges of municipalities, from fines to the electricity issue in Soweto. So I initially once suggested to my friends that if I was in leadership, I would have sent soldiers with the electricians to Soweto and ensure that the meters are installed. But then I was like labeled as a capitalist and not adhering to the issues of, well, not being sensitive to the issues of the people who are struggling. So essentially, my question would be like, where do we draw the line in terms of, well, paying back our debt? Because the Eskom debt is a very big issue. In fact, the debt to GDP ratio was one of the reasons why we got downgraded. So do we focus on paying that debt and ensuring that everybody who's supposed to pay for electricity does pay, or do we focus on adhering to people who are struggling and end it there?
Sis Lindiwe, ngiyabonga kakhulu Nkosi yami. I hope you can still hear me. So you are absolutely correct. Let me share some figures with you. The Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, COGTA for short, oversees more than 300 municipalities. Of those, only 7% are delivering. 33% are okay. The other 33% are relatively dysfunctional. The last 33% are totally dysfunctional. Yesterday, the Auditor General, Kimi Makwetu, releases his Auditor General's report. And it shows that actually we have gone backwards in municipalities. The irregular, fruitless, and wasteful expenditure has increased by another 9 billion, now to 32 billion. But the frightening figure says 79% of municipalities need urgent intervention. That's 8 out of 10 municipalities. Why? And the simple answer is because this ANC-led government has been complicit in allowing municipalities to be looted. I'll come back to that point. Lastly, when you look at South Africa the structure of the economy, we have more than 740 state-owned enterprises and state-owned companies. The single biggest, both systemic and systematic risk is Eskom, because its debt today is 450 billion. The problem is that even if you gave Eskom another 100 years, they are unable to service that debt from their own balance sheet in this lifetime. Therefore, they will need the shareholder to come in and help. 2010, total number of employees at Eskom were 32,000. Today, there are 48,000. They are trying to drive them down to 46, so that at the end, they end up with about 32,000. And then break up this company into three distinct areas: generation, distribution, and transmission, which should have been done maybe 20 years ago. So the reason why I want to come back to the issue of looting and state capture, just 3 points. One, our brethren, Keith and Keen in the rest of the continent, told us when we were celebrating on the 27th of April, 1994, that you are just another African country. Your leaders are going to do what they did to the 54 other African countries, because today there's 55, 1.3 billion people, speak 2,000 languages, continental GDP of $3.5 trillion US. Nigeria being the biggest at 420 billion and South Africa second at 350 billion. Secondly, we made a mistake because we thought, because our leaders spent 27 years on Robben Island, that therefore they are incorrigible, meaning they are also uncorruptible. We were wrong. Lastly, we extrapolated their skills at being good negotiators because they outfoxed the National Party, a sitting government. We extrapolated their skills in assembling an AK-47 in under 3 minutes to them running a modern economy that is rapidly globalizing and it's complex. I'll end by giving an analogy. So we take somebody that comes from the bush. On day one, we say, get into the cockpit of a Boeing 747-400 that takes 377 passengers, 38 crew members, 187,000 liters of fuel. That's 3 swimming pool fulls of fuel, Jet A1 fuel. We say, drive this thing from OR Tambo to London Heathrow for 10.5 hours, a distance almost 14,000 kilometers. If we did that today, we'll be sending those 400 passengers to their certain death. And yet that's exactly what we did. We gave them control of our education. We gave them control of our healthcare sector. We gave them to run our state-owned enterprises, even though they themselves have never run a fish and chip shop. Even though a majority of them, up until today, still don't know the difference between income and cash. Some of them still ask us today to say, when we say a deficit, what are we talking about? Lindiwe, thank you so much. Let me take another question.
You know, Lola, I know you said, yeah, you want to listen today. And the reason why I mention your name, Mr. Mohale Lola is currently in the United Arab Emirates. Originally, I think Lola is from Kenya. And it would be very interesting for her just to, ask a question or maybe, pertaining to leadership. My understanding is that, on the importance of leadership, it begins and ends with leadership. This is an excerpt that I got from one of John C. Maxwell's books. And there's a definite, deficit of leadership. We're very much aware in this country. So what things are happening out there, Lola, that you would like just to, and perhaps pose a question for Mr. Mohale in the UAE that maybe South Africa can learn from?
Well, thank you for the opportunity, Mimi. Thank you, Mr. Mohale. It's a pleasure to be in your presence. I am an admirer of people who speak the truth like you do, no holds barred. And you hit the nail on the head. My reason for being in the United Arab Emirates is because of failed systems in my country, failed policies, failed everything, where you try to do the right thing and you keep getting roadblocks. So I am that child who was going to the neighbor to look for food. I believe you're aware of the leadership style of Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid, and that is what has made Dubai a success. So I need not mention that. My question would be, I always find that apart from blaming the leadership, I think it's also we, the citizens, who are not holding the leadership accountable. And where we have a track record, some of these people are not from the moon. The people we live with, they are people we interact with, and yet we do not hold them accountable. We give them positions of power, and they continue ruining our continent. My question would be, where is the disconnect? Because there are very many noble men like you, especially in the last 10 or 20 or so years, where the people who are there, noble examples like yourself. However, the continent is still in the doldrums. Where is the disconnect? Where is the disconnect that despite your presence and your being vocal about the issues, where is the disconnect that we are still not thriving? That would be my question.
Lola, wow, thank you, my dear sister. So you're absolutely correct. You know, when you look at Dubai as part of the United Arab Emirates, they were totally dependent on oil, nothing else, for their revenues and indeed their wealth. Abu Dhabi was the first one to discover oil. They've got 8 wells, Dubai has got 4. But the Al Maktoum family realized early on that this thing is not sustainable. Therefore, they have to diversify their economy. During difficult times of global recession, 2007, 2008, they embarked on massive global expansion and on construction. But they survived that recession. They built the tallest building in the world, Burj Al Arab. Today is called the Burj Khalifa, because in the middle of it, another tragedy hit them. They had to go to Abu Dhabi to borrow the 20 billion to complete it. And the leader of Abu Dhabi then gave it his name together with his money. But vision. And their vision was simple, to say, let's make ourselves the center of the world and make sure that our biggest foreign earner is actually tourism. Because if you get it right, tourists will always come, unlike the finite resource, which is oil. How is this different from the rest of the continent? The rest of the continent, when leaders come in, they forget that their job is to serve, to improve the quality of lives of those people that they've elected. That this notion called self-interest starts first by acting in the best interest of others. The Japanese say, before you become a millionaire, make somebody else a millionaire. That when companies say we are creating jobs, in fact, they're not creating jobs, they're creating markets of the future, because there's a problem when your own people, your own employees, cannot afford the goods and services that you provide. So leadership is very different from management. Management is about getting things done through other people. Leadership is about being genuinely obsessed with the development of others. Leadership starts first and foremost by extending trust. Leaders talk straight. They start first with the who, then the what. They find it very easy to palette, highlight, and celebrate others. African leaders are about me, myself, I. They're about looting. In fact, it's a Kenyan who gave us the book, It Is Our Turn to Eat Too, describing how Kenya lost its way. And unfortunately, instead of learning as South Africa, being one of the latest to come into being free, second only to a new state that is probably, 6 years old, that has just been created, South Sudan, we didn't learn. We did exactly the same thing. So for me, the disconnect is found in the fact that most of our leaders, instead of building not only sustainable institutions, but resilient institutions, because resilience in Africa, it's much more than the food, water, energy nexus. They eat all the money with the full understanding that where they themselves are sick or their nuclear family, they will go abroad for their medical care instead of fixing the hospitals where they are. Gabriel Robert Mugabe, instead of fixing Parara Nyeto Hospital in Harare, he would rather go to Singapore and to London and to Malaysia for medical care. When other countries are saying, I want to fix the healthcare system so that I go to it to test it, that it works, and all public servants are forced to do that. Ours know that they can go somewhere. I think what COVID-19 has done is to lay bare these deep structural inequalities. Africa is poor by choice because Africa is not a poor continent, just poorly managed. Thank you, Lola. I'll take another question.
Evans, I believe it's your turn. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. Hello, sir. Maybe let me take, my question was more likely a little bit offish of what we have experienced or we're experiencing in the turmoil rather we are in as Africa. So my first question is directly to how you began the book. So in the beginning of the book, you take us through how you joined from pharmaceutical companies and you moved up the ranks and you left to pursue other leadership roles elsewhere from within. And at some point you moved to Cape Town. Chances are in your path, you had to accept or reject certain offers or certain roles based on what you felt maybe was good or however you guided yourself. So my question is around guidance. How did you navigate yourself in saying, okay, this is the role I want to take up, or this is a challenge maybe I feel I can contribute the most over other roles and other challenges? That is my question.
A beautiful question indeed, because you look like a young person to me. So the honest truth is that more often than not, we give these things names after, not when we're in the thick of things doing them. I've been very blessed with many opportunities. One of them is that I got married early at age 17, and I say so in my book. In South Africa, you need to be 18 to get married, which means I needed my parents' consent to get married to Susan. She was mad to say yes. On the 24th of August this year, would have been happily married for 39 glorious years. That's the best decision I've ever made because it focused me early on. I had another human being who was helping me think through the trials and tribulations of life. I wasn't alone, but I had another human being to worry and be concerned about. I wasn't a free spirit anymore. I was accountable to somebody else. I had to make sure that I tell her when I'm going to be late, where I'm going, because I loved her and I still do. But what it does is you are 17, you get married, you then say, but where am I going to put her? Then you start looking for a house, so you save like crazy. And then you manage the deposit and you buy a house. We bought a stand and built our own house. When your colleagues of your own age are buying BMWs 318i's, Gusheshes, and driving them around as if their whole life depends on it. With you, you say, you know what, I would drive a Toyota Yaris because I've got a house, I need to buy curtains, I need to buy furniture, I need to buy a bed. So before you know it, you are really focused. In my 20s, I had worked so hard and achieved so much that I became the managing director of the world's biggest and oldest elevator company, Otis, in 1996. 2 years just into a democracy. Not of Otis South Africa, of Otis Africa, responsible for 33 of the then 53 African countries. Today we've got 55. First 3 years are reported to Paris, the last 2 are reported to Madrid. Even if you are stupid, having been an MD for as long as I've been, you tend to learn something. And the title of the book says, Lift as you rise. It says you don't have to wait until you are called the managing director before you start lifting your own kith and kin, blood and sweat. It says you don't have to have the title called MD, president, or CEO before you start lifting. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you very much.
Ken.
It says this notion of lifting as you rise, if you are a government, you have to serve the people that have appointed you, because the best amongst us lead with the heart of a servant. That servant leadership is not a leader that has many servants. It says if you are a business, business cannot continue to be an island of prosperity in a sea of poverty, because when business does well, society generally does well. It says at a personal level, you take 2 steps on the corporate ladder of success and you lift a hand down and you pick up another human being as you rise before you get to the pinnacle. It says nature is a wonderful metaphor for business. That's why trees don't eat their own fruit. Rivers don't drink their own water. Flowers give off this wonderful fragrance, not because they themselves want to smell like Fontainebleau, but because they want it to be enjoyed by others. That leadership, it's about doing things for others as a moral obligation. That the sun does not shine because itself needs vitamin D, but it does it whether it is overcast or not, because it understands it is its duty. It finds joy, meaning, and purpose just by doing its job. Lifting as you rise must be our job, just like a moral obligation. Just like bees make honey without worrying about the honey. Just like the farmer makes wine from the grapes without being too obsessed about the vines themselves. Do it out of absolute love. I think, especially as Africans, we can achieve so much if we don't care about who takes the credit. We can achieve so much when we don't wait until we are called dollar billionaires. But that with every step that we take, we make opportunities to help others, because by so doing, you're helping your very own. Let me take another question. Mimi?
You know, Ntate Mohale, is, I cannot help, but just wonder that the most of us, we've all suffered through the oppression of apartheid. And, you know, my understanding and my lived experience of apartheid is that it was very much to do with putting people down, you know, making people lose their self-confidence, their self-worth, you know, making us believe that we are really, really, you know, not worthy at all. And if you are imprisoned like that mentally, even if the master, you know, unshackles you and opens the doors, you still remain, you know, enslaved. The reason why I believe that a lot of, you know, the people in our society are very reluctant to even make different political choices, is it not because of the fear of the past, the lack of trust, you know, of the white person, to say that if I vote for anything else, I'm not going back, you know, to the days of my parents, of my grandparents? Is it not, you know, that inherent fear that despite what is happening currently, economically, socially, we keep on, you know, making the same decisions as, you know, as it before? I mean, what role really does apartheid have to do?
Mimi, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, especially for us in South Africa, we have endured 340 years of colonialism since 1652, 94 years of separate development since the early 1900s, when the ANC was formed in 1912. There was already the Land Act of 1913, and the decision was made to exclude Africans from the political power and therefore disenfranchise them. 48 years of apartheid. When that happens, of course, it damages you psychologically. That's why Black consciousness, as espoused and perfected by people like Steve Biko, was to work on the Black person, herself and himself, to say the duration of oppression is never determined by the oppressor, but always determined by the oppressed. It's only when the oppressor says this much and no further that the lot of African people can change. He says the task of convincing white people that they are human beings, not superior, is actually not as hard as the task of convincing Black people that they are human beings and not inferior. Because all their life, they've been exposed to subjugation, exclusion, and oppression. And they've come to define themselves in the image of the master. The angels are white, the devil is black. Everything that is good is white, everything that is bad is black. Therefore, the symbolism before us tells us every day that we have no future without a white man. And yet, Ghana became free in 1957, Kwame Nkrumah. And since then, progressively, we were probably the last but one to become free, because South Sudan, it was themselves really within. But what have we learned? What have we really learned? So that we can demonstrate to our children that we get it. So I find it very funny that even when you talk about broad-based Black economic empowerment and about transformation, we still go to white people asking for their approval, whether this is okay, whether this is sustainable, whether this is not going to mess up the economy. There's a problem when you depend on the oppressor to come up with solutions to your own oppression. We haven't really believed that we have the wherewithal to change the material conditions of our people. So what we have done, as I conclude, is that we have successfully transitioned politically, but we have not collectively succeeded in eradicating the legacy of apartheid, in fundamentally transforming this economy and the society. The economic power patterns have been set for generations to come. All you have to do is to be born white. The chances are you are going to be okay. You are destined for the leafy suburbs of Bryanston. Be born black, and the chances are you are relegated to the informal settlement of Alexander, the most congested informal settlements, just 4 kilometers from the richest square mile in Africa, which is Sandton. Forever relegated to the self-perpetuating vicious cycle of abject poverty. We are not prepared to break the cycle. Here's how I think about it. So Jacob Zuma's administration, 9 wasted years, 4 years, they stole 1.5 trillion South African rands. Every year, they were siphoning off, on average, 100 billion South African rands. Had they used that money to create just 10 black millionaires, not billionaires, would say maybe the industrial scale looting has produced something of value. But I don't see it. I don't see it. We have been free for 26 years. We have 740 plus SOEs. If we assume that we would have put an African in every single solitary one of these 740 SOEs as an MD, president, or CEO, just for 5 years, and you assume that 20% of them failed, today, 26 years later, would still have more than 3,000 Africans with a demonstrable track record as managing director, as CEOs and presidents. But what we have today, we had to go to the white man to be the CEO of Denel. We had to go to a white man to be the CEO of Mango Airlines, which is a subsidiary of SAA. We had to go to a white man to rescue Eskom, that introduced rolling blackouts on the 1st of January 2008, 12 years ago. 12 years later, we have not solved the rolling blackouts. I'll take another question.
Thank you so much for that response. Feli, are you ready?
Yes, I'm here.
If you can-
So hi, everybody. Thanks for this opportunity. So I'm from the same citizenry as Lola. And I had 3 questions as well, but I'm just going to focus on one. And it's on in the third chapter that says, Africa, it's time to fulfill our potential. Now, I think we all agree that Africa is poor because of lack of good governance or leadership. And then you just mentioned it again. And my question is very similar to Lola's as well. And you just mentioned what I was going to say as well in terms of the oppressed versus the oppressor. We tend to point our finger, even books that are written, even when we shout about it on social media, we tend to point the finger at the leader. It's already a failed leadership. We already know that. So my question has always been, if the period of that oppression is down to me and you, the oppressed, in an age where we're so super connected because of social media, where do we start uniting and coming up with solutions that will hold these leaders accountable? That always baffles me so much. So that's my
Ferdi, you're absolutely correct, and thank you so much. You gave us Jomo Kenyatta, who was a friend of South Africa, paid the supreme sacrifice as the frontline states, because the apartheid government went after them, bombed them, went in the middle of the night to stabilize them. And we owe our freedom to people like you, Nigerians, the people in Lesotho and Botswana, who helped us in Swaziland to give us safe houses, etc. But look at the African potential. Every mineral that the world needs, the good Lord has endowed Africa with. Not only that, but it is probably number 1 or number 2 in the world. It is Africa where we probably have the longest and the best sunshine in the world. The sun here shines 226 out of 365 days, blue skies, African sunshine. But the World Authority on Solar Energy is Germany, where they are lucky if they've got 90 days of uninterrupted sunshine. So when we don't think for ourselves, we place our future in the hands of others. It is up to us to create our own new world. And what is that new world? You see, rich countries are not the ones where the poor can afford to buy cars, but where the rich take public transport because it is safe, it is affordable, and it is accessible. The problem with Africa is that you can't move from east to west and vice versa because we haven't built roads, which is the first stage in connecting countries before you even talk about regional integration. The Chinese know this. Say the first act of creating economic activity is to build roads. When they create China Airlines, it's not to make profit, it's to connect people and for the ease of doing business. Therefore, they've got a very different mandate. It's not a commercial mandate. It's not a developmental mandate. It is a connecting mandate. It's a business mandate. It's a growth mandate of growing the economy, not growing the airline. So when we have given the ANC-led government 26 years, it's more than enough chance to judge them on the dispassionate facts and the ability to deliver. And if they haven't, then change the leadership. Let me take another question.
Okay. Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Mohale. So Himka, I see Himka has sent a couple of questions and he's not available on the platform at the moment. So at the time, oh, Himka.
Yes,
my apologies,
thanks.
Your name. Please go ahead and pose your question.
Thank you so much, Mimi, and thanks, Mr. Bonang, for joining us tonight. In the book, you describe a leader very well in detail, and I get a really good image of what a leader should be like. And I've seen other literature about leaders which would describe a leader in a similar way. But why is it that we don't find that the people who occupy leadership positions are those types of leaders that are described by what we would like? And then how should we get those people who are leaders into the leadership positions?
Sure, Himka. So to start off with, Mimi, when she started, said, we are experiencing a death of leadership, and yet we've got many leaders, many people that call themselves leaders. Because we don't take time to develop the pause muscle and say, what is needed for the task at hand in this country, in this era, when so many of us dare to hope that joy and peace will prevail. When you go to a school governing body of white people, they say the one that's going to look after our money must be a chartered accountant, therefore must be a CASA, because you will know how to take the 100 Rand and make it 300 Rand. When you go to governing bodies of Black parents, they will elect that evening the one that makes the most noise without defining what does the job require, what are the attributes that they need, what is the job specification, what is the profile of the animal that we want. Therefore, Africa is poor by choice. The choices we make, the choices of leaders that we make. In South Africa, the people who were entrepreneurs here during difficult times of apartheid is Dr. Sam Mutsuenyane, is Dr. Richard Maponya, it's Ephraim Chabalala. These were millionaires in the 60s. They know how to make money. Dr. Sam Mutsuenyane is still alive. 26 years into democracy, we have a ministry of small business development. And all of those ministers have never run a fish and chip shop, a spaza shop. They've never wrapped 220 rand notes together before they got into politics. Therefore, we don't put our best foot forward. We are taking somebody who does not have a pilot's license and we're putting them in the cockpit of a Boeing 747 and say, drive these people to London Heathrow. That's what we are doing. We came with outcome-based education, which works best in OECD countries and developed countries. And we forgot that we are a developing country. It was General George Patton who said, great wars are won by good execution, not great plans, because good execution will save even a mediocre plan. African leaders can talk anybody under the table. Our problem is the doing, the execution. In South Africa, we have a plan coming out of every orifice. We started with the National Development Plan. Then we changed it 3.5 years later into a different plan altogether when Thabo Mbeki was still a deputy president called Growth, Employment and Redistribution, or GEAR for short. From then on, it has been an alphabet soup. As Giza, the 9-point plan, the NDP, National Growth Path, the plans are everywhere. But our problem is the doing, just the execution. NDP 2030 correctly diagnoses our problems, and it says these are the 9 things you have to do to take the bottom half into the middle class. For the first 2 years, we didn't even have a ministry responsible for the implementation of the NDP. In fact, the then president didn't even talk about the NDP. Up until today, when the president speaks with the ministers, nowhere do they have a conversation that says, show me your actual programs to bring about these 9 commitments in the NDP. So we make plans and we hang them on the walls, we put them into file 13, and on Monday we go on to do something else. Management is about planning, leading, coordinating, and organizing. Only the private sector can spell project management, how to deliver a mega project on time, on budget, and in full. Governments plan the the new multi-product pipeline at 7.2 billion. It's 4 years late. By the time they deliver it, it's 27 billion. In Eskom alone, they decided to build not 1, but 3 mega projects, the biggest, 4th largest coal-fired power stations in the world, Medupi, Kusile, and Ingu, the hydroelectric power in KwaZulu-Natal, budgeted at 30 billion and 36 billion. Today, they are not complete. They've already cost 56 billion and 67 billion, and they are not even generating half of the capacity that was needed, 9.6 gigawatt each. So the problems of Africa, I think, is we choose the leaders wrong, we choose inappropriately, we don't look for skills, and our problem is we talk, but we don't do. Let me take one more question. Mimi, when it's time to knock off, please say so. I'm trying to make sure that I make up for the lost frustration in the lost connectivity.
Mr. Mohale, so are we still okay for 7 o'clock? I'm watching that time, and I've got a very, very mindful timer here. If it is, we're still on track. I'll definitely let you know.
All right, madam.
Okay. Just before I give the Fat Cats Book Club an opportunity, I'm not too sure, Ishmael, you'll help me out there. What role did the BMF have in terms of your executive management development? And is there still benefit for upcoming, young, Black executives to join, the movement?
Yes, I was the president of the BMF eventually, after being national president to Babu Begisibia, when it was my turn to be the president, we said this organization was formed on the 17th of April, 1996. 16th of June, the same year, Soweto went up in flames. It had nothing to do with us. We can't take credit. But we had never had a woman president. So I became national deputy president to Begisbia. Nolita Fagude was our MD, technically ineligible to be elected as a president. We made a plan. Nolita became the first and the only woman president of the BMF up until today. The BMF stands for two things and two things only, but I'll talk about three. So the first is the development of managerial leadership, primarily amongst Black people. Secondly, it's about socio-economic transformation. Thirdly, that's the one we don't emphasize, it's about thought leadership. How do we describe, how do we define, how do we shape our own new world, fashioned, formed in our own image? The BMF has been absolutely amazing. For me personally, my first board position, I became a director of the BMF Johannesburg branch. I served on the board of BMF National until my own company, 11 years I spent in pharmacy, said, this guy speaks a different language. His mature is exposed. Better we make him a director. Because they could see that I was already walking, talking, acting, behaving, and delivering like a director. Therefore, the BMF made me the person that I am today. But I joined the BMF because I wanted to join other Africans in saying, how do we form a support group to each other and one another? How do we give a lending hand and a shoulder to lean on? How do we shorten our own learning curve? How do we cross-pollinate the experiences, lived experiences, so that we are not spectators of our own lived experiences? Not to include it in my CV, but because I wanted to roll my sleeves and do real work. Because we knew that we were stronger together than individually. Today, I think the BMF is still relevant because it gave us the Basotho Head formula. It gave us the affirmative action blueprint, 60% of which today is called the Employment Equity Act. We went to Spear Wine Estate in the Western Cape in Stellenbosch and took a resolution to form a Black Economic Empowerment Commission with Maduke Lotendlovu. And we asked Cyril Ramaphosa to chair it when he was still an activist, not yet a politician. And we still refer to it as the Ramaphosa Commission up until today. Out of it came the BE Act, as amended in 2007, is now called the broad-based Black Economic Empowerment. The broadness is not on the 300,000 rural women, but the broadness is to stop being only obsessed with ownership, to expand it to things like skills development, enterprise development, and training, and corporate social investment. But most importantly, to preferential procurement, because we realized that 40% of the economic activity in a company was in the value chain. So if we made Black people to access that value chain, they could make lots of money without even owning anything. Lastly, when we became free on the 27th of April, 1994, and Tito Mboweni was made the minister, the first minister of the Department of Labor, the DG being Sipho Picha. We gave him not one, but 16 members of the BMF. Ndate Mpho Makwana became Chief Director, Employment Equity 60% into writing the Employment Equity Act. He left. We gave him Dr. Loisom Babani, who then completed what is now called the Employment Equity Act. The National Party would never appoint a Minister of Finance without going to their business arm, which was called the Broederbond. Today, our government finds it easy to appoint a Minister of Finance without talking to Black business in whatever formation, whether it's the Black Business Council or the PMF or whatever. Who's advising President Matamela Ramaphosa? Whom does he trust? Because God forbid if you trust the same people that were your oppressors to come up with a solution to lift the oppression urgently, but fundamentally, I doubt it. Memimi, over to you.
Yes, Ishmael, anyone from the Third Caste Boat Club who would like to pose a question? And then I know Gift is waiting.
Mimi, thanks for the opportunity and thanks for the invite. Kanyisa is on the line. She's my colleague, fellow member at the club. She'll just pose a quick one question. Over to you, Kanyisa.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kanyisa Ngyonja. Thank you so much, Dr. Mohale, for such an inspirational book. I really enjoy it. Sorry, I didn't see that my video was off. I enjoyed it, but the part for me that spoke to me most is page 95, where you speak about how our strength is in our diversity. And you mentioned here that, quote, it is only unsettled people who never hire unsettling people. And it's only unsettled people who never hire unsettling people. So my question then, Getata, is around this. How do you build confidence in a world that has seen you as the other, as a young Black female, specifically in corporates? How do you show up without conforming with the standards that are already there, but at the same time you show up as a young Black South African woman without conforming? So it's a question in two parts. How do you build confidence in a world that sees you as the other and has always seen you as the other? And how do you make sure that you don't conform to what they've set as the standards, but at the same time, you still show up as the best version of yourself? Thank you so much.
Wow. Kanyisa, ndibulela ngokuzithobileyo nongazenzisiyo. So first, we need to be very mindful, purposeful, deliberate, and conscious in who we are and what we want. So in short, be you, do you, for you. We must stop trying to impress white people. We are in political office, but we don't have the economic muscle. When the ANC can't pay rent, it still goes to white people asking for money. And when you do that, they'll continue to dictate the agenda because he that pays the piper calls the tune. The way to build confidence is to accept that nobody is born a managing director, a president, or a group CEO. That all of us had somebody who believed in us, gave us our first opportunity to be MD. Once you are given that opportunity, work like your whole life depends on it, and then you gain the necessary experience. You see, a doctor, it's not what you are when you qualify. It's what you become once you start practicing. When you see your first case of malaria and you diagnose it appropriately, the patient still lives, you are a good GP. Similarly, an MD, it's not what you are when you get appointed. It's what you become once you start practicing as an MD. Therefore, we must believe in our own people. We must give them the opportunities. We must hold them by the hand. We must counsel and coach. Everywhere where I've been and I was finally accountable, check that track record. I've always left another Black person. At BLSA, I've just left an amazing warrior of a woman. At Shell Oil Products Africa, where I was 8.5 years, I've just left Ubabuhloni Peace with Justice in Dolo. At Otis, Sager and Ready. That's my job. I don't have to wait for anybody to remind me. That's my job. That's what I do. It's my job to find my own my own successor. And that successor, first and foremost, must be an African woman. If not, a Black person in general. It's personal. That's what gives me joy. You don't learn to swim by reading a book. At some stage, you have to dip your big toe into the cold water, and it's uncomfortable. When you learn to ride a bicycle for the first time, you think you are going to fall, break your neck, and die. It's scary. Everything when you do it for the first time is cumbersome. What we must do is to give our Black people a chance to get into the water, knowing that we have set them up for success. Because if your boss wants you to succeed, you will succeed. It's not if, but, or. You will succeed. Therefore, we have to put systems and processes in place to make sure that you succeed. Because people don't succeed, systems succeed. When I conclude, if you are a world-class cardiothoracic surgeon at the old Joburg Jan Hospital, today is called Charlotte Macleke Hospital. You are a good cardiothoracic surgeon because you've got the whole hospital. You've got an operating theater. It has a bed. It has all the dissection instruments. And it has the oxygen at the corner. It has the cuff to monitor the blood pressure. And it has the stuff that you only shout and say, scalpel, they put it in your hands, you cut and you throw it away, they catch it. You say suture, they give it to you. You are a good cardiothoracic surgeon. The same world-class cardiothoracic surgeon banished to Brantford with no systems and processes, no support, no system. At best, can be a GP that dispenses Panado and non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, nothing more. You can't operate because we've got no theater. Therefore, we must build systems that support our very own to be successful. When a Jewish person has a piece of land, you can bet your bottom dollar that the architect will be Jewish, the builder will be Jewish, the electrician will be Jewish, the lawyer that does the transfer will be Jewish. Black people go to motor dealerships all the time. They buy their cars from white people, and yet they are Black salespeople. And they could have just walked longer, found the Black person in a corner and say, I want to buy my car from you because I want my 10% commission to come from you because I'm lifting as I rise. I don't have to expect you to come to me and say, can I help you? I seek you out. Black people buy houses all the time. When you buy a house, they don't even ask the question, so who's going to be the conveyancing attorney? Because I want it to be Mulefe Mputa Mputa. I want it to be Mokose. No, we don't even ask. They just use the ones that they've used. And if it's Pam Golding, they'll take it to a Jewish convincing attorney. The transfer attorney, we don't even ask. We don't even go to Black estate agents to say, Nomsa sells houses in Kilani. I'm going to ask her to find me a house in Bryanston. We are not deliberate. We are poor by choice. That's how we give confidence. We must seek out other Black people. So when I'm in the MD of Transnet and I'm looking for an MD of Transnet Freight Rail, I go and look for another African. That's how I give confidence. We have always been othering. It's a part of who we are. The idea we get into these white corporate entities, it's not to be assimilated, it's to come with a fresh and a new perspective. When we go there, we are ourselves who are vulnerable. We know that we'll produce embarrassingly good results, that will build close personal intimate relationships with the teams that we lead. We don't have to behave white and talk white and act white, we still need to be ourselves. We are Black, we are Africans, we are grandchildren of Skukuni, of Shaka, of Mgungunjani, of Mushweshwe. And when you walk into the room, the first thing that they see is your Blackness. Not that you are the Chancellor of the University of the Free State. They see the short hair, not that you are a professor at the Johannesburg Business School. They see the features of an African, and they probably think that you are a gardener or a helper coming to make them coffee. They don't know that you are the chairman of Bidwest. So Blackness defines who we are. We need to carry it with pride. We must own the strength in our name. We are Africans. This is our country. This is our time. And we need to put our stamp on it. When I started, I said, no people can be helped by or benefit from institutions that are not a direct result of their own character. That character must be defined by Blackness from the Black pool of excellence. Another question, Mimi?
Wow. Gift, you next.
Thank you, Ntate. Thank you for your presence for today. It's an honor and a privilege to have you today. And my question is, it's all about mentoring. I think it's your last chapter that you talk about your mentoring process. We have a problem when it comes to mentoring and having people who are already there for us to follow and look up to. For example, I only knew about you because of your book. I only knew about Norusa Fagute because of the book. I only knew about Natim Tetua because of the book, because I'm a book reader myself. That's when I saw forth that I need a mentor in my life, because I'm a Lokshin guy, I'm from Soweto, I want to start a business. I've read Vusite Mwaya's book, I'm looking for a mentor. So in situations like that, it's very, very difficult to rise up to be the best as we can be. So my question to you today is, how can one from dusty streets of Soweto make it and be recognized or be the best they can be and have mentors like yourself to look up to?
Sure. Now you hit to the nub of how we can lift as we rise. Gift, thank you so much. So first, we need to know that there's a difference between coaching, which happens at work, on the job, somebody counseling, coaching, and holding you by the hand to be good at developing technical competence in that company. That's coaching. Mentoring is somebody from outside who's a sounding board, who allows you to be exposed, to imagine the world not as it is, but as it can be. That you feel absolutely safe with, and the chemistry is established, where the confidentiality is absolute, nothing, never, no one, where you can be yourself and be vulnerable. That's mentoring. Different from sponsorship, because the person that sponsors you is normally in the company, much more senior, saying, I'll speak for you when you are not in the room. I'll tell others about your accomplishments, because if I don't verbalize it, they will not know. When they speak ill of you out of rumors of what they've heard on the photocopier or in the urinals or in the corridors, I'll say, that's not the gift I know. The gift I know stands for this. This is who he is. That's how he does it. But most importantly, this is why he does it. Did you know that last week, his target was 3, he sold 5. That's a sponsor. To make sure that they navigate with you your own career pathing and succession planning. So mentoring is very important. It's about giving back. It's about lifting as you rise. Lastly, you say, you didn't know about us until you saw a book. My grandmother used to say, until and unless lions have their own storytellers, Stories about hunting will always glorify the hunter. Therefore, history is up to the temporary occupants of the corridors of power. The victor writes the parameters of history. Therefore, it's important, it's crucial, it's critical, it's courageous of us to chronicle, to archive, and curate our own stories for posterity's sake, but also to demonstrate to ourselves that we have something to develop and to contribute in the world economic agenda, in the progress of the world, because we know that the Egyptians that built the pyramids 3,500 years before Christ, engineering skills where each stone is 2,500 kilograms, 2.5 tons, but they put one on top of the other in perfect symmetry, showing the most adept engineering skills. Those were black, that the black Moors went to Europe and to give Europe its civilization. That the reason why colonialism has been successful is because not only did it take Africans as slaves and took them to the US of A and to the Caribbean and to Europe, but it used other Africans to trade in their own and sell their own. But a large part of that agenda was to wipe out, to extinguish this progress, this history that we have made, that God can be so unkind as to create black people and put them on the southernmost tip of the world without any form of religion or worship, that we have to look up to a white man for everything. Today, borrowed converses pour from our lips, borrowed robes hang from our neck. We have forgotten what it is like to be African. We are ashamed because we are told that it's heathen, it's backwards. Whilst in the meantime, they stole anything and everything. You go to the museums of Prado in Madrid, in Paris, everywhere else in the world. It's Africa's art and wealth that was stolen and pillaged. And it's still there, and we haven't even asked for it back. Only now is France saying we need to return the manuscripts that we took from Africa, but also the art that we took mostly from Tanzania. And as we speak, they're building a museum that will house what will come back from France. We accepted that, especially if you are a French colony, that you yourself as an African president, 28 of them married white women who were European. Their own bank accounts had to be kept in France. The currency had to be French. The national treasury had to be based in France, of your own people's money. You have to request with motivation your own money and how you want to use it, which may be approved. In your own inauguration and state functions, you can only serve French wine and speak French better than the French people themselves. That's why colonialism was such an embarrassing success, because we continued with it ourselves. The momentum, it's a big snowball that as it rolls down the hill, it becomes bigger and bigger, and the momentum is such that it's unstoppable. Another question.
Tata Mali, thank you very much. You know, on the question of mentorship, my experience and observation has been that, and I think you do mention it over and over, that when the student is ready, the teacher will, will be available. And sometimes I think people look for mentorship in celebrity. So you've got people, especially now in the age of social media, celebrities are all over the show. And young people are looking up to these celebrities, are very, aspiring to be like these celebrities. And yet the teacher is right there. So, and I think this is something that we still need to get over and really understand value. And sometimes, your teacher's right there because they are not dressed in that social media form that you would like, and, you will get nothing out of it. So I just wanted to say hello to Vusi. You know, I'm sitting in this platform, and I would like to acknowledge him because of he started a book club in the beginning of lockdown, and it brought together a whole group of people from Zimbabwe, from Kenya, from Botswana, and for that I do thank you. You know, Vusi, just to just to get me personally to refocusing on reading and trying my very best to to continue with the spirit of reading. And I think on that note, I wanted to, it would be great if you say hi, Vusi.
Hi, Mimi. Thank you for putting this together. Ndade Mohale, thank you for your time. For the benefit of those who joined the conversation, I've had the privilege of having listened to Ndade Mohale on several occasions. But I most recall the work I had the privilege to do with his team when he was at Shell. And Ndade Mohale has been incredibly consistent, not only in his messaging, but I think in the values that hold the messaging together. And so, Mimi, to you and the team for putting this together, I think it's an important next step for us, the idea of conversing, of visioning, but I think most importantly of challenging ourselves around the ideas that we hold true. Just a final note, going through the book, one of the things that jumped out at me, Ndade Mohale, was how some of the ideas we hold true are human ideas. And that at the end of the day, if human beings sought to create ideas, those ideas were based on a particular context, framed by a particular understanding of the world. And that understanding of the world is based on how those people are socialized. And that if we are to lift as we rise, to lead this generation into a better tomorrow, we're going to have to rethink that socialization, rethink how we see the world, and rethink how we think we can contribute to the world. So those are my thoughts. But for today, I want to be a fly on the wall and enjoy this and listen. Thank you, Mimi.
Wow, Babu Tanjakwayo. I'm developing goosebumps because I love you with all my heart, my dear brother. The last personal engagement you and I had, we drove through the N1 and we had the most amazing conversation, intense. You were on fire, that's all I can say. I follow your work. I read everything that you do, and I feel inspired and I'm proud to be an African. And I say to everybody that cares to listen, I know Ubabu Vusi Tanjakwayo. When you were younger, maybe you'll remember we were in Binone, and our children went to St. Dunstan's with Mr. McLeod. That's where I met you for the first time. You were a little beginning, but I could tell you then that you were destined for big things. And my brother, you haven't disappointed. Keep up the energy level.
Thank you, sir.
Sis Mimi, you spoke about mentoring, that nature. It's a wonderful metaphor for business, that maybe the mentor is in front of you, that a student, when a student is ready, a teacher will appear. Because only when you are ready, you will learn from anything and everybody. Benjamin Zender wrote a wonderful book with his lovely wife, Rosamund Zender, called The Art of Possibilities. He's a music teacher, and he starts by giving every class 100% when he starts. He extends trust. For 38 years, he's never been disappointed. So when you're looking for a mentor, any mentor will do. It depends on how have you defined your understanding of where you are and where you want to go and how you're going to get there. So in simple English, say these are the expectations of the mentee These are the expectations of the mentor. Here's the process that we are going to follow. This is how often we are going to meet. And when we meet, these are the things that we're going to talk about. But also be clear about what mentoring is not. Because sometimes that's more important than anything else. And then you as the mentee, you go and drive it like a whole life depends on it, because indeed it does. As I end in honoring Justin Vos's input, short as it is, but profound, and I've made some extensive notes. We have this amazing privilege during the national lockdown. He starts a book club. So the question I want to pose to you is, when sailor women and sailor men cannot go out to sea for whatever reason, they repair their nets. What are we as Africans? What are we as this book club doing to repair our nets so that when the lockdown is progressively eased and finally opens and we enter a new realm, a new way of doing things, because this is the new normal. Yesterday ain't coming back. What are we doing to repair our nets so that we are fit, we are ready, we are agile, that we are not only sustainable, but we are resilient, that we have laid the foundation for our children's success, that we are putting about this notion called generational wealth into place. Bequest. Because we can't be poor and condemn our children to the same poverty. Because every parent wants their offspring to be substantially, on a composite basis, better than they have been, their life to be better, to go to places where they themselves could not go. What are we doing to repair our nets as South Africa? To make sure that 26 years into democracy, we have learned from the spillage and the wastage and the industrial scale looting that we can genuinely focus on lifting the bottom half and bringing them to the middle class, so that we can also be proud as Africans that these are the monuments that we have built, not just to be known as a nation of consumers, but to invest in our own productive capacity. When I started, I said, build our own businesses so that we can hire our own children. How's Mimi?
Dr. Mohale, if I may ask just 5 more minutes to get an opportunity to close. And I know there's an eager lady from Botswana, Uteng. Uteng, will you make it quickly so that we can release Mr. Mohale?
Oh. Thank you, Mr. Mohale, and everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay, so I have a short question. I wanted to know, according to Mr. Mohale, what contribution does the system of voting the ruling party into power, especially in Botswana, especially in Africa, sorry, have on the challenges that we cry about every day on bad leadership in Africa? And the question is emanating from the fact that when the ruling party is not doing so well, we always resort to say opposition would do better, but we are never really guaranteed that actually is going to do better. That is my question. Thank you.
You come from a country that is exemplary, albeit small.
I'm from Botswana, yes.
Often that day,
Erra.
Married a white woman called Ruth.
Indeed.
Loved her so much that he was prepared to relinquish the kingship. That's how powerful this feeling, love, can be. Was asked by his own people to come back. And that's why the capital today, Bari, Borena Baruna, Haburuni, which is now the capital. Mufumad Waruna, Hari Runi, Borena Bobaruna, Haburuni. So in South Africa, we're lucky because the Apex Court has just said it's unconstitutional that only political parties can stand for office, that individuals can stand to be members of the National Assembly. But I think as Africans, especially in South Africa, we need to say, but what did we fight for? What did our forebears die for? And trace it from 1912, when the ANC was formed because of disenfranchisement, to 1952 during the Defiance Campaign. 1955 clipped down the Freedom Charter, 10 demands. The 8th demand says the doors of learning shall be open. The first one says the people shall govern. The preamble says we the people, not the politicians. But also to bring it to this best constitution in the world that was gifted to us in 1996 by Matamela, Cyril Ramaphosa and Rolf Meyer, after rescuing Codesa 1, collapsed Codesa 2, and he gave this constitution to Rolihlahla Nelson Mandela to sign it. Not in the main body of the constitution, but just the preamble. It also starts by saying, we, the people, united in our diversity. Recognizing the past injustices. It goes on to the main body and it promises the 3 freedoms. Not only promises, but guarantees them the freedom of association, the freedom of speech, but most importantly, the one that's less sexy, freedom from hunger. And it entrenches this notion of social justice. It imbues you and I not only to recognize these past injustices, but it mandates you and I to fix them. It says fix them, not the politicians. Therefore, we hold our own fate in our own hands. With this ruling, they will change the entire Independent Electoral Commissions Act, the entire Electoral Act. So it will become possible for individuals to stand for presidency over a period of time, like in the US of A, directly. So it will have a combination of constituency-based, but also this notion of individual representation to bring about final accountability, so that in your ward, you know who is representing you, and you can say, but the water has been gushing from that pipe. It is irregular, fruitless, and wasteful. So, Uteng, in the interest of time, I think we also need to question ourselves and say, we have been wary of politics as Africans because they are corrupt, rotten people serve there, and they steal money. But nature does not like a vacuum. So when we leave this space, the riffraff fill it. And therefore, we are into this self-perpetuating vicious spiral that is facing south. I think it's about time that women and men of stature, of integrity, of wholesomeness say, I understand leadership, it is to be the other, not self-centered, to serve, to find meaning and purpose, rooted in principle and ethics, to improve the quality of lives of those less fortunate than ourselves, to enter this pigsty called politics, to clean it from inside and to eat the beast from inside out. Because as long as we look at it from a distance and say it's for them, I don't think it is capable of fixing itself. Lastly, I think we need to demand certain standards of our politicians, minimum standards. and lead by example by going to school. Because the same way that communication is not only oral, education is not only formal. Therefore, we must school ourselves in who we are, what we want, what do we do, how do we do it, but most importantly, why do we do it? Because when one steadily burns the midnight oil, one gains access to the domain of knowledge and wisdom, the world of meaning, the world that cannot be conquered without a persistent crusade. We have to conquer the stereotypes that says Black equals poverty, equals anything that's not good, and the opposite also holds. Memimi, thank you, madam.
Dr. Mohale, you know, I think my take is that we have really invested a lot of time in politics and in civil rights. At some point, we need to move away from the politics of the day and begin to understand what the African Americans proudly call the civil rights. We need to understand the economy. So we need knowledge, I think, before anything else. And unity is more paramount now than ever. We have to unite and have a common cause in order for us to begin to see the change that we really want in this country and in the rest of the continent. And then on that note, Evans, the floor is yours, just to give the vote of thanks to Mr. Mohale for his time.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Our honorable guest, Tate Mohale, fellow book club members, invited guests on this online session and Facebook Live. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of this lockdown book club and our fantastic and amazing host, Mimi Masala, and the entire behind the scenes team, I also include Ohlale, Mimi's son, who has been helping us on the technical side on her end, and all our Facebook Live case. Let me call us maybe a league of readers or future leaders here together. And on my behalf, extend a very hearty gratitude and thank you, Tate Mohale, for gracing us with your presence, attendance, sharing your wisdom, passion, and mentorship with us today. Our continent of Africa is in need of such wisdom and leadership. We thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
And I apologize profusely for being late because technology didn't want to play ball. This is the first time it ever happens to me. I promise to be better organized tomorrow.
I'll say this again, sir. I don't want to lie. The most amazing thing was your patience during all the back and forths and your willingness to help and stretch out. Trust me, it's amazing. I really appreciated that opportunity. Thank you very much.
Had you told me Vos is here, I would have come to your office in person.
Oh boy. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have an awesome evening, everybody, and we'll see you on the other side. Much appreciated, Dr. Mohale. May Africa learn from your type of leadership. It is exemplary. You know, it is. I cannot describe it, and people really do not believe me when I say we are actually not Facebook pals or any friends or anything whatsoever. And this is a very, very humble gentleman who then, you know, you give him a call and he will speak to you like he's known you all of his life. You know, I thank your grandmother, I thank your mother, I thank, you know, Miss Susan for giving you the support and allowing you to be who you are today. You know, we can certainly learn quite a lot. And I really pray that your spirit really rubs off a lot of, you know, African and South African leaders so that we are able, you know, to call them leaders, you know, of tomorrow so that we can pick up the phone when we are down and they will be able to talk to us. Thank you so much and have a good evening.
Activate. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you.